Welcome to the While You Were Working podcast, presented by Rogue Marketing. When you're responsible for revenue, it's hard to look up from the work. But while you're doing your day job, the market shifts. While You Were Working is where we turn today's trends into tomorrow's strategies. Welcome to While You Were Working.
Welcome to While You Were Working, the podcast for revenue accountable business leaders wanting to stay ahead of the curve. You know, it's hard to keep up with the trends and insights shaping business when you're busy driving growth. This world moves fast while you're working, and on today's episode, we're going to shake it up just a bit. Today, you have both managing partners of Rogue Marketing. I'm Chip Rosales. This is my partner, James Loomstein. Rogue is a strategic marketing agency that helps clients defend their marketing spend. We're business builders who carry a marketing toolbox, and we're so glad you're joining us. You know, in each podcast episode, and multiple times each week on our social channels, we share articles and resources that can shape your business thinking, but are really easy to miss while you're working. Today, we're going to spend the entire episode sharing our perspective on resources we've recently seen that we think listeners like you might value. In fact, the common thread as a tie against all these articles that we've picked up today is this idea about technology and juxtaposing that against being human. So I wanted to kick us off with an article that you found in Search Engine Journal around agentic browsers and how that's impacting digital efforts. So I'm wondering, we got a new term here. What is an agentic browser? And does it completely upend everything that we've been doing, or is it just an acceleration of things that we've already been thinking about?
I think it is an acceleration of like the next thing in browsers. So we're all familiar with our regular browsers, Chrome, Safari, where you put in a keyword or a term or a question and it responds with links, right, for you to take the action. Well, agentic browsers are basically doing the work on your behalf. And so if you think about the way you search today, you are looking for information. You want to look at different flights and compare prices. You want to go and do your shopping. And so if you think about where that leads us, and browsers are, history shows us that when something takes off in browsers, it actually is a fundamental shift in how people do things online.
It's a cue.
Yes.
It's a cue for marketers to be thinking about.
It is. And so just take like Microsoft Copilot. It's reported that 70% of Fortune 500 companies are leveraging Copilot. And in universities, you have about 10 million students who are leveraging Google Gemini. So you're starting with an entire generation and a workforce that has an agent or a partner working with them to complete tasks. So what does that mean for companies, like for CMOs and CEOs of just what do they do? If we looked at that, a couple things come to mind. One is we have the consumer trust has never been so low as it is today, right? And I think that agentic browsers are actually going to bring trust back because for some reason, people trust the answers they get from ChatGPT versus more than they trust the stuff from Google. So if you think about it that way, when we're creating our content now, and we used to just try and have keywords and answers and meta titles and descriptions, well, now we have to be able to create content that agents trust and thereby are providing that information back to users.
So the next step is create content that the agents can trust.
Yeah. So I think there's kind of like three big shifts, right? I think there's search and discovery is going to fundamentally change. And you're changing from trying to rank for a term to being selected by an agent to show your content. That is completely different, right? So if you're doing ChatGPT searches or Perplexity or whatever you're searching in or Gemini, how is it actually making that information shows up? Well, that information has to be found somewhere. And so if you're the owner of the website, right, and you're doing your thing, you have to make sure that your content is in a way that agents can find it, that agents can validate it, trust it, has the right signals, so it can then be produced and shown to the user. And so I think you're going to get away from a lot of like the bad traffic, the e-wiki, right? Like all the trash. And there's going to have to be a lot of process put into websites now to make sure they have the right schema, to make sure they have their content is digestible, it's how-to focused, it answers questions, and more importantly, it starts to show what to do next with that content.
So what else is on your handy dandy list?
So we talked about search and discovery. We talked about content and experience. So it needs to be agent friendly, clear structure, accurate metadata, concise summaries, explicit steps. And then the third is around the CRM and first party data. So first party data, since data is just continuing to be, isolated, it is incumbent among companies to ensure that they are collecting as much first party data as possible, right? Creating lists, opt-ins, building up their databases, building up their CRMs. And that's going to be crucial because when you start with agentic browsing and people are coming and looking to solve problems, then you need to make sure that your sites have clean APIs, that the data is structured and clean, that there's actually a way for agents can hand off context, that agents can initiate a session, that agents can trigger the next best action.
Well, it sounds like this article is a fairly meaty article that helps marketers and leaders really understand how to turn content into something that can allow that an agent can complete an action. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a mind shift that we need to be thinking about how do you produce content that not just for content's sake, but for actually producing an action, which kind of lends itself over into the CMO playbook for AI transformation, which is another article that you brought to us over the past month. Google put it out. And so Google published this piece, and they published it for CMOs saying that it's time to turn AI from hype to horsepower. Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that as a title. I think that's a great talking point. But what do Rogue listeners need to be doing or be thinking about now based upon this playbook?
So a couple things come to mind. And I like this article from the standpoint of this is Google working with their enterprise clients where they are collaborating and partnering and figuring out how to get more out of AI. And I think there's a lot of people out there who say, I want to do AI, but they get paralyzed by what to do first. If I work in marketing, I think there's kind of one or two areas I'm focusing on. One is, I think there's a bigger opportunity to use AI to support your business, not build your business. And by that, I mean, just take like voice of the customer. That if the only thing we used AI for as marketers or chief revenue officers or running companies was voice of the customer, we could extract so much value out of that and make better decisions on where to place media. The second one is using AI to help increase efficiencies in marketing spend. And by that, I mean everything from like Performance Max to Search Max to finding where we're spending on non-revenue producing marketing spend, like asset creations, content. Like I think it could take so much further prototyping. And instead of looking at AI is going to solve all the problems, using AI to look forward and use it as a predictor of future rather than historically looking at what has happened.
Such a good point. I actually think that dovetails really, really nicely into this chart. I think you probably saw this chart. We put it out on our social channels a little while back. It was some research from the World Economic Forum, and they put out some information on what they called the future of jobs. So they had some skills that mattered: design, user experience, customer service, operations, security, AI data, some of the things that you've been talking about here even just now. But I was particularly taken by the ones that they say matter the most by 2030. And those happen to be analytical thinking, resilience, leadership, creativity, systems thinking, curiosity, and lifelong learning. And so when I hear you talking about AI and you're talking about digital literacy and automation and the just the technological things, I'm struck that actually none of those are purely technical. The human elements that you bring to them, that is what differentiates them. And I think that's what we were just saying in that last article. Our ability to be able to say, yes, use this amazing technology to cast a vision, to broadcast a story. That's a differentiator. So I'm curious, which of those 2030 skills that we were looking at, do you think is the most underdeveloped right now?
System thinking.
System thinking.
I really do. like as we've been talking about AI, how we've been helping our clients work through and implement and train, this idea of system thinking, of breaking things down into the smallest possible step and then figuring out the next action from that step is a critical skill. Because if you think about it, like, we have to be the ones to help train the AI on what to do next, like how to be a good agent, how to find the right information.
Exactly.
And so part of that is like we have to help anticipate what they'll be looking for, and that becomes part of critical thinking. It also becomes part of system thinking. Like, I think those are probably the two most underrated skills that are probably needed today, because you can't go to the textbook and look up the process.
Yeah. We posted on our social channels a funny video, but it was a little boy and he was trying to put a ping pong into a red Solo cup.
Yeah.
But he bounced it and it hit a frying pan, and then it did something. And wherever it did that, he made it go to the next frying pan, to the next frying pan, but that's this next step. It was a kid in budding, a leader in training right there around systems thinking. And I think that's a great one. What I do love this 2030 critical skills, because I do think we get so enamored in the nuts and bolts of things. And really it is a lot of things like curiosity and thinking and creativity, and that's what's going to bring all the value to these technologies. So it does seem to be that it's undeniable that every one of us has to be technologically savvy, or as this next article said, we all need to be techies now. So McKinsey put out an article, said just that. What were some of the key takeaways for you from that particular article?
This gets back to the problem where 92% of companies plan to increase their investment in AI over the next 3 years. However, 1% of leaders described their current AI deployment as mature. So that is quite the gap. And this idea of upskilling, I think we think of like upskilling like we do in the trades. This is only like the first minute of AI. So we're all kind of like early anyway. And I also think that creates opportunity for us. So the other thing that was mentioned in the article was that organizations that focus on both human capital development and financial performance are 4 times more likely to outperform their competitors financially. And so if you think about just the upskilling part, there's actually 2 benefits of it. One is if the company can put in the time and the resources and allow it to happen, they end up getting better workers and better outcomes who can create things faster than previous. They also create a culture of lifelong learning, which also creates, when you're recruiting the next people in, you already have it baked into your DNA. And so lifelong learning becomes a part of the company, which is something that like we need to have. We can't just show up and be like, here's your computer, get to work. Like, we have to look at how does it all kind of fit together within the business. And so I think there's like the upskilling of the work. And then for the non-technical people, I think there needs to be like a technical floor. Like, you don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be a developer, but you need to understand how your company uses technology across the company.
Yeah.
And then I think that on the top end, like for your tech people, they have got to have a tech ceiling to reach for their technical ability, but more so the soft skills. And so if you're the CTO or director of IT architecture, or you're a product developer, and you don't have the soft skills of presenting, of understanding the business side of it, and you just come in with your idea and you think it's like the greatest idea possible, it could be. But if you can't communicate that to your CEO, to the board, to the exec team, like, it's never going to get the buy-in, because too many other things are coming at them all the time. If I was building a marketing team today, I would want people who are really good at prompting, so like prompt engineering. I would want them to be able to use large language models as a partner and understand when to use each ones that we have today. And then I want them to also learn how to almost build a digital twin to help them do better work, not to do the work, And then I think they need to be able to have some technical ability. Like we used to say there was no math in marketing, so that's why people got into it.
It's true.
Right. And then there's a lot of math. And now I think there's a level of coding. Like I don't think you have to be a hoodie and a coder at night and hackathons, but the ability to build prototypes of what it would look like, the ability to make agentic workflows, I think that will become like just the standard. And you can't just write something and turn it over to your product development team and say, go build this. I think we as marketers who have the vision have to be able to turn it into a prototype or something that is physical, they could see on a screen or even hold, and then take it to the next step.
Everything you're talking about really reminds me of this last article. We don't have much time left, but there's something I do want to talk about, a leadership article that I saw. And it's reminding me of that because I was thinking about your stat about like 90% are trying to go, are investing in AI, but 1% find themselves to be very mature, right? And I think a reason for that could be what we found in this leadership article that I found. It says 5 words to align your team instantly. And those 5 words are, what does winning look like? Yeah. And I think one of the reasons we're having a hard time figuring out how to mature and get faster is that we don't actually know what that looks like. So I really like that idea. What does winning look like? So we've been talking about digital transformation, automating our way into the future, utilizing new technology, staying human. How do we know that we're achieving what we hope to do? So that phrase, while it is simple, just 5 words, is definitely not simplistic. The problem is that when people think that they're aligned, but no one knows how to recognize that we actually got where we wanted to go, that's the problem. So it reminds me of another sentence we say around here, and that is clarity equals commitment. So as we leave you today, we hope that you'll use that simple phrase, what does winning look like? Because I think that's the only place to start. Thanks for joining us on this episode. You can find links to all the resources that we shared in our show notes. We'd also invite you to follow us on social media. Search Rogue Marketing on Facebook and X or Rogue Marketing Agency on LinkedIn. We're regularly sharing insights and articles that you might have missed, while you were working. See you next time.